All right, today we're talking to Chris Anderson, who, among many other things, is also my boss. Chris has a unique perspective on AI-assisted development or vibe coding. Best known, I think, as the Apache CouchDB committer and co-founder of Couchbase. What's fascinating is that Chris is entirely self-taught as a programmer, having studied philosophy before getting into coding, which somehow seems appropriate when dealing with the AI. I feel like that kind of human-centered approach has kind of been consistent about the things that I've known that you've been building throughout your entire career, which is now just this focus on making AI-assisted development or vibe coding like not just possible, but adding that element of fun back into it.
Programming's always been fun for me. Like, I don't know if when you were a kid, you got to move the turtle around.
Sort of starting to consider myself a programmer with a big, heavy asterisk in that the because of how much I lean on the AI.
And that is that feeling of empowerment equals fun for me. What keeps me coming back, I guess, is that dopamine hit where you're like, I wanted to do that. And then you make a change and it doesn't do that. Instead, it like blows up. But hey, you did something. And then a little bit of this, and now you have what you were looking for.
I've always got that dopamine hit by getting other people to build things for me or with me. But now I can kind of do it on my own. And I'm like, oh, it's a much bigger hit now.
Yeah, totally. So my mission embraced that not everybody was going to be a programmer, because I think that's always going to be true, but more so in the past. And so how can I put my thumb on the scale so that the things that people do make are more empowering to users, easier to modify, easier to inspect, and more flexible? One of the old phrases that has thankfully fallen to the wayside a little bit, with the advent of the web, etc., is I can't do that. The computer won't let me. And so I was striving to make it so that it was harder to accidentally create a computer that wouldn't let you. But these days, it's really about having a computer that will let you do anything, that'll let you do anything. And that's why vibe coding is so empowering.
Since getting into vibe coding, I'm downloading more software and like setting up more shortcuts, and like I'm using the computer, like running local scripts on my own machine. Like my individual machine is more important to me in the last like 2 or 3 months than it has been probably in the last 5 or 6 years.
There's a reason your senior engineer laptop budget is like double that of a normal laptop budget, because you're going to use the whole thing.
What drew you to, or like the AI assisted development initially? Like, how did you get into that?
I guess I was early on in AI. I helped write the O'Reilly ChatGPT shortcuts material, and that was because I picked it up right away out of curiosity. But more, I suppose, it just like immediately scratched my itch for, hey, this can make it so people can do things they couldn't otherwise do. It makes it so the code's not the hard part, and I think that lowers the barrier to entry. It doesn't make it so everybody's an expert, but it makes it so the pathway to becoming an expert, the gatekeeping is dramatically different and reduced.
Do you think there's anything to your philosophy background that actually comes into play? Like, does that shape your thinking around this stuff?
Most of my philosophy training is like, let's call it deductive reasoning. And most of my programming training is inductive reasoning. And AI lets them come together a little bit, right? Because you could try and feel and understand from your day-to-day use of AI certain fundamental facts about it. Like, it does not create a logical model. It has no understanding. It creates a language model, and that can be very convenient, but it's nothing more than a fancy paintbrush. You have to decide what you're painting.
Yeah, I've definitely run into that, and the way that the language spits out will trick you into thinking that it's logical a lot of times if you're not careful. I've built a lot of these frameworks that I make, like I use Claude Code, and I make sure that Claude Code goes and checks the steps now beforehand. I start to diagram like thoughts about like how to build something, and I'm, do this, then check it in here, then do here. Everything's really like step by step, whereas I used to just say, hey, help me do this. And now I'm like, no, I want to make sure that each step is done correctly and iteratively.
Well, that's a tension though, because the more that you go into it with strong expectations about what the output is going to be, the less vibe coding has a multiplier effect, right? If you're trying to do something that would have been specified with more written requirements than lines of code, like a shuttle computer or some kind of banking system, and maybe vibe coding is a glorified autocomplete. But if you don't have that mental model, then it's almost better just to relax and go with the flow and be more editorial. Oh, that didn't work, roll it back. Oh, let's try 3 tries on this and see which one is best. And I think for the vast majority of people meeting the vast majority of everyday challenges, having that kind of see what happens approach is a healthier way to interact with it.
Does it make you a better programmer or a more productive one? Or if those were two sides of a lever, which one do you think is more or less?
Well, before AI ever even came around, the right answer was already developed, which is that productivity on programming is not about lines of code. And in the long run, it's not even really about running systems and their outputs and reliability. It's about building a team that has a domain model that they're super, super expert in so they could dive into the nooks and crannies and get it right the first time. And AI probably makes it easier to get by without building that model in your mind. If you really want to do the right thing, if you want to do what we considered engineering or programming 5 years ago, you can't do it without that mental model. Your Claude Code, etc., if you use the right discipline, you could probably get to that mental model. But I don't think that's vibe coding. I think that might be vibe engineering.
Would you say that AI is a superpower? Does it feel more like something like pair programming?
Pair programming is a great one because the scarce resource is attention. AI just allows me to take part of that model building, that world building, and bookmark it, freeze it in a way that I can come back to. I could say, hey, AI, like, I'm pretty sure there's something going on with the way we're appending to this file. Can you investigate the code? And then I can go make dinner. And when I come back, it's not like I have to be like, what was happening? It's more like, oh, cool, that's what was happening.
Let's talk about how you use it right now. Are you generally just going to open 4 tabs and run the same prompt 4 times?
If I think something is super cool, I might. I don't usually do the 4 times thing because most of the time any one of them will do and it's good. But if the first pass is not in the ballpark, don't try to fix it. Just start from scratch.
What's the difference in how you're working? So if you're just like spinning up something for fun really fast on Vibes DIY versus how you're actually coding to make Vibes DIY?
I've fallen mostly into using Claude Code. I think it's maybe got the best road feel. You know, it's not going to cause too much trouble without asking you. It's smart enough for most tasks. Every once in a while, I have to be the smart one in a Claude Code session, but Claude Code is hooked up to my code in a way that works for me, and that's what matters. So spend a lot of time in there. Spend a lot of time doing vibe engineering. Sometimes I do real engineering. I should probably do more real engineering and less vibe engineering. I'm dangerous.
How does this shift when you're working on something on your own as like an individual developer versus, working on something with other people within that code base?
Real team coding has to be resilient to people showing up tired or having a bad day or being just brand new on the team. And so when you're doing real engineering, you probably have ideally more lines of code related to test and verification than you do to the actual executable software that, is your production goal. The more you look at the best practices of like a true engineering shop, the more that's going to look like what you need to support high velocity AI work.
As someone who's been like working on, like I'm building every day something, even if it's just like a little update or fixing something, I have not yet gone into the realm of working on something with someone else in terms of that code. And I'm really curious about that.
We're lucky we've got like a super hardcore badass Mino Abel's writing core code on Fireproof, and he's not afraid to turn around and say, hey, Chris, did you read that? Because you're asking me to read it. I really think that's the first line of, it's almost just like an etiquette consideration thing. That probably will handle 75% of the answer to your question. And then the rest is, architecture is probably more important than code.
Are there parts of the code then as you're building a larger project that you sort of lock down and you're saying like, okay, we're only working on this part?
So that's part of why we've structured the Vibes DIY code base how it is. We use a mono repo approach. This means we can have lots of different independent packages, some more core than others, that are developed side by side in the same history. If you go on the Vibes DIY GitHub repository, you'll see these top level modules. If I'm working on a change and all it changes is the prompts, I can look and say, hey, look, all the files of this change that I didn't have time to read the whole thing of are in the prompts repo. I'm pretty sure that the worst that could happen there is that we get like lower quality outputs, but it's not going to cause new bugs or crash stuff that wasn't crashing before.
What are you excited about? What's coming up? What can't you do now that you're like, I think this is coming, or I want this to be coming?
A lot of people want it to be that you don't have to bother yourself with caring about the particular materialization of an idea into code. And that if you maybe had create prompt with all the details needed, and then that can create the code on a on-demand basis. There's a lot of interest in that. What those tools will allow us to do is have the safety to let end users make their own program.
I find myself wanting to build something for every domain I've ever registered, rather than just a flat page, like working software that I can just throw up on a URL at any time.
Yeah, I've got a few domains I don't really know what to do with. I should see what the model builds me.
Thanks, Chris. Like I said, I'm excited to check in with you kind of over time and see how this stuff changes. And if you have any thoughts, just in general, feel free to hit me with like, oh, you should try this or you should try that. I'm always up for an assignment.
Oh, okay. There's all kinds of fun stuff we could do.
Thanks, Chris. I'll talk to you soon.
Later, Mike.